The front entrance to our home is seldom used. We usually enter through the side door to the garage or the sliding glass doors leading to the patio. To the right of the entryway stands the formal living room, meticulously maintained but the least frequented room in the house. On the left, at the end of the entry, lies a hallway connecting to 3 bedrooms, including our spacious master suite and a guest bathroom. The formal living room, enveloped in darkness due to closed massive curtains, features a white camelback couch against the back wall, with large wingback chairs on either side, all facing a walnut coffee table. Although insignificant until that day, late that morning, I found myself in a wingback chair, facing away from the archway between the entry and the living room. In that chair, I have often contemplated my life and assessed potential losses during Lynn's absence. The prospect of ending our troubled marriage brings concerns about our shared friends deciding their allegiances, the loss of our house, potential alimony payments for years, and the sudden disappearance of half my net worth alongside legal expenses. Despite these considerations, dealing with Lynn, whom I describe as vindictive, remains an inevitable challenge. Amid my reflections, the side door opens, signaling Lynn's return from grocery shopping. I realize I should have pretended to be in our bedroom to avoid another argument if caught in the living room. Arguments are commonplace, initiated by Lynn's unwarranted criticism for minor infractions, fabricated reasons, or no reason at all. I understand it as a tactic to keep me off balance. Lynn can prolong arguments for weeks over trivial matters, and I always find a way to placate her, believing it better to end disputes promptly. I deem life unbearable with constant friction, and aim to settle fights as soon as possible, though the challenge lies in the short time until the next one. After 10 years of marriage, I see no solution other than pass away or divorce. Nonetheless, I persistently try to improve the situation, primarily for my sanity, rather than to make things more pleasant for Lynn. I hear the freezer door shut, realizing she has put away the frozen food. Anticipating her request for me to get the remaining groceries, I brace myself for her orders and criticism. To avoid her for as long as possible, I remain motionless, waiting for her call or whistle. The whistle, resembling that of a dog, has become nearly unbearable. Instead of her voice, I hear light footsteps as she approaches the entryway. If I had looked, I would have seen her stop at the tiled entry floor, peering down the hallway to ensure she is alone. Quietly waiting, Lynn contemplates calling me in the car before getting home but feels safe, assuming I am diligently working on the gazebo in the backyard. Within seconds, I hear her cell phone chirp as she dials a number. Now in the entry, just 5 feet away from the back of the chair where I sit, Lynn speaks to her father about plans for Thursday afternoon. She mentions calling him at work after 1 o'clock and the logistics of their meeting. Still unnoticed, I listen as Lynn discusses details with her father, concluding with a light-hearted farewell. I heard the flip phone close, and her footsteps retreated across the carpet towards the sliding glass door. Whistling and calling out to the gazebo project he had been working on in the backyard, she seemed oblivious to my labored breathing and the pounding of blood in my heart and head. Tense situations were not new to me, and I relied on automatic responses honed from my experiences in the Army and elsewhere. In such moments, the first rule was not to panic unless actively under attack. Utilize knowledge to one's advantage, choose the right time to engage, maintain a blank face, control breathing, and appear normal. I stood and entered the den, stating, "I'm here. I was in the bathroom. I've got to run to the hardware store and get parts for the gazebo," crossing through the din toward the kitchen and the side door while avoiding eye contact with her. Marveling at my ability to articulate those words and my restraint from reacting violently, I walked by, and she gave me a look, noticing the redness in my face. Advising me to wear a hat, she expressed concern about potential sunburn. She mentioned not wanting to see my skin peeling off in a couple of days. Additionally, she informed me about groceries that needed to be brought in before going anywhere and emphasized not being gone all day. After dropping her phone into her purse on the kitchen counter, Lynn went out to inspect my work on the gazebo, leaving criticisms for my return. Lynn's communication style was typical, mostly involving instructions and implied or explicit criticism. As she entered the backyard, I retrieved her phone, checked the last dialed number, memorized it, and returned the phone to her purse. After putting away the groceries, I left in my small pickup truck but didn't head for the hardware store. I stopped at a local park a couple of blocks away. For the first 15 minutes, I replayed the short conversation in my mind, wanting to ensure I had every word memorized to make notes. There was no doubt about its meaning. My wife was having an affair, likely in our house, maybe even in our bed while I was at work. Furious, I felt I was subsidizing her infidelity by working to support her. Who was the man she called Daddy? It wasn't her real father. The area code was local, and her parents lived 1,000 miles away in California. In the early days of our marriage, she sometimes called me Daddy during lovemaking moments, though she had stopped doing so. I had thought she might be signaling a desire for kids, but we decided not to have children a couple of years into the marriage. She was undeniably a daddy's girl. Considering practical matters, I pondered my best course of action. Her lover would enter through the back gate on Thursday, likely walking down the alley. I contemplated ambushing him there, but wondered about dealing with my cheating wife if the lover was on foot. His car had to be nearby. It struck me. The lover would probably leave his car at the park. Determining who this person was became crucial. The obvious approach was to call the number from her cell phone. Having someone else make the call, as if by mistake, seemed plausible, with a woman being the most likely to get information. Who could make that call? Who else might know about this? The answer was clear. Lynn's best friend was Sue. If Sue didn't know, I doubted anyone else did. Lynn's sister was unlikely to have information, since they had not been close since the sister's messy divorce and subsequent estrangement from the family. Could I ask Sue? I had known her as long as Lynn had, and Sue had always been my friend too. However, women could be more loyal to each other than to their spouses. Sue was married to Nick, who was 15 years her senior, and they seemed to be the most loving couple in the world. I figured that Sue would tell Nick almost anything. Would she disclose information about Lynn, though? Did I consider Nick a friend? We weren't close friends, but Nick was an upstanding guy, and I would have thought Nick would have told me if he'd known about something like this. I decided to try Nick. That meant a drive to the golf course, where Nick, semi-retired, donated time on Saturdays as a goodwill ambassador for the course, in exchange for a free round of golf during the week when the course was not full. On the way over, I planned my approach very carefully. I couldn't just blurt it out. What if the news got back to Sue and then to Lynn? I had to be cagey. Riding in a golf cart with Nick as he checked on conditions at the 7th hole, I brought up a hypothetical question. I inquired about his approach to confidential conversations, asking whether he would feel obligated to keep it confidential or if he would share it with Sue. Nick gave me an odd glance and continued driving for several yards. I clarified, asking if he and Sue always shared what they heard from other people, even if it was shared in confidence. It was just a hypothetical scenario. Nick pulled over onto the grass, turning to look directly at me with an almost expectant expression. In response to my inquiry, he said, "Do you have a specific question for me? If you do, ask away," maintaining the same strange and intense look on his face. I asked Nick if he could keep our conversation confidential if I were to pose a question. I made a promise that I wouldn't mention it unsolicited, but if Sue were to inquire, I wouldn't lie to her. That was my operating principle. I assured him that I could keep a secret, but I wouldn't deceive my wife. It was evident that Nick knew something, and I sensed that he wanted to share it with me. After composing myself, I directly asked him if he knew anything about a possible affair my wife might be having. I rephrased to make it clearer, asking if he had any knowledge of an affair Lynn was currently having or had in the past. Nick's response flowed out like a dam bursting. He recounted an incident from last New Year's at the Holden's party. Everyone was outside, preparing for the fireworks display, when Sue fell ill from the champagne. Despite her infrequent drinking habits, she went upstairs to the bathroom. On the landing, she heard someone attempting the doorknob while she was getting sick in the toilet. When she washed up and left the bathroom, she heard noises coming from down the hall where it turns towards some bedrooms. She was afraid that someone else might be ill, and she walked down there and looked. Lynn was up against the wall at the end of the hallway, and some big dude was, well, there's no good way to say it. He had her against the wall with her legs wrapped around his waist, Lynn saw Sue standing there and she smiled and did a little wave off, like, "Get the hell out of here." On the way home, she shared the details with Nick. Sue and Lynn, being long-standing friends, needed to discuss matters before taking any action. I suggested immediate disclosure to you. Ultimately, Sue had a conversation with your wife, who conveyed that the incident with Buddy White was a one-time occurrence fueled by drinks, a disagreement with you, and aggressive advances from Buddy, a known bully who married into wealth. Sue, aware of Buddy's reputation, requested that I keep it under wraps, not wanting to jeopardize your marriage over a singular event. However, I made it clear to Sue that if you ever directly inquired about it, I wouldn't lie. The burden of this secret has weighed heavily on me for the past 5 months. I'm relieved it's out in the open, but I'm deeply sorry for what you're going through, man. Unfortunately, it's not over. Sue deceived her. Lynn has been involved with Buddy, or perhaps someone else by now. I overheard her talking to him on the phone just an hour ago. Let's head back to my place and discuss what Sue has to say. We left the golf course in separate vehicles and headed to Sue and Nick's place. He conveyed the news to his wife, and she sat down in tears. She had harbored high hopes for my and Lynn's relationship, willing to offer any support she could. However, upon learning that the affair was ongoing, her demeanor shifted. Sue experienced a sense of betrayal similar to what Lynn had caused. Up until now, she had believed the assurance that the affair had ended and had based her actions, or rather inaction, on that falsehood. "Sue, there's something you could do for me. I examined Lynn's phone, and I have the number she called. Would you mind giving him a call, pretend it's a wrong number, and try to obtain his name? I want to confirm who she's involved with now." Sue, an editor working remotely, held a PhD in English Lit and possessed a theater background. Devising the call with her finest acting and social engineering skills, she opted for her faultless English accent, consistently leaving a lasting impression. Dialing with the phone on speaker, she heard, "Hi, this is Buddy White." Sue blinked. "Sorry, wrong number." "Well, that was surely unsatisfying," she commented, her entire scenario unraveling. Yet, the revelation was clear. Lynn hadn't terminated the affair with White, adding another piece of crucial data. Discussing our next steps, I insisted on catching the duo during their upcoming Thursday encounter, aiming for extensive ammunition. I wanted to confront my wife armed with abundant facts, catching her in flagrante delicto and exposing the lies she'd inevitably use to conceal the situation. Expressing reluctance to hire a detective due to costs and uncertainty about Lynn's interactions before Thursday, I sought a swift means to gather evidence. They fell into a contemplative silence for a minute or more. Sue suggested the idea of a mole. She proposed the notion of having someone, like Lynn's best friend, extract the truth from her. I was skeptical, but Sue insisted, saying, "Never underestimate an angry woman. I've had enough of her and how she's treated us all. I believe I can craft a story that will compel her to divulge everything." Over the next hour, we devised a plan. Sue urgently calling Lynn, claiming a desperate need for help, and arranging a Sunday morning coffee meeting. Nick would modify Sue's old purse to hold a video camera, recording every word and facial expression. By noon on Sunday, they anticipated having substantial information. Sue promptly contacted Lynn, referencing a situation akin to the New Year's party. Lynn agreed to the meeting, secretly pleased with her friend's newfound assertiveness. Sue arrived early at the coffee shop, choosing a table under an awning, arranging her purse with the concealed camera. Ensuring the optimal angle and conducting audio tests, she positioned chairs strategically. The air was calm, eliminating wind noise possibilities. She set it up for one-button recording, the 16-gigabyte card offering ample storage. Nick had ingeniously secured the camera and purse with Velcro straps, disguising lens and mic holes within the purse's pattern. Sue was prepared as Lynn arrived. Sue asked Lynn to grab coffee, mentioning that she would save their spot in the most secluded area. Sue pressed the button when Lynn returned with the drinks, swiftly confirming the recording. They quickly covered the basics, and Sue began her tale. Sue expressed her dilemma to Lynn, mentioning that there's this guy who's interested in her. She didn't know what to do, describing him as attractive, especially since it had been ages since she and Nick were lovemaking. Sue shared that Nick completely trusts her, and that she's never cheated on him. However, she admitted feeling tempted now, and sought Lynn's advice. Sue wanted to understand how Lynn felt after the New Year's party, and asked if she would regret going through with it. Lynn responded by encouraging Sue, saying, "Go for it, girl. Honestly, I can't fathom why you haven't done this sooner. Nick's nice and all, but, honey, he's past his prime. You're still young and cute. I've always admired your appearance, but I've never understood why you waste your time with Nick." Sue was surprised by Lynn's lack of remorse and asked if the New Year's party was genuinely a one-time thing. Lynn explained, "Honey, I won't lie to you. I had to tell you that at the time, or you might have spilled the beans. But now that you're in a similar situation, we can share all this. In fact, we'll be having some real steamy discussions. Lynn, spill everything. I'm so into this now that I'm thinking of doing it myself. How did it start with you and Buddy? Are you still at it? You should see the look in your eyes. If you're not excited now, I bet you will be in a few minutes." Lynn proceeded to share details about her encounter with Buddy at Holden's Halloween party. She described how they met 2 months before, with Buddy eyeing her at the party. Lynn explained that they discreetly met on the landing and ended up in the bathroom. She recounted the passionate encounter, emphasizing Buddy's qualities. Lynn affirmed that she was still with him and would be meeting him next week in her own bed. Sue inquired about me, expressing concern about any feelings of guilt. Lynn dismissed any guilt, stating, "Sue, Paul's a husband. You can't treat a husband like a lover. They serve different roles. Paul is there to do what I want. Buddy is there for good closeness." Lynn explained her strategy with me, treating me like a good provider who follows orders. She mentioned using diversionary tactics like checking for perfume to make me believe she'd never cheat. Lynn likened having me around to having a little gay friend, describing him as docile and someone she could control. She highlighted the freedom she enjoyed, knowing mine's whereabouts and never worrying about me catching her with a lover. Sue asked Susie if she had other lovers, and Susie replied that she couldn't count them all. The first one was in their first year of marriage, picked up in a supermarket. He never knew her real name, and they bounced around hotel rooms for 6 months until he got too clingy. Susie mentioned the need to watch out with young guys. After that, there were a series of one-offs, including a salesman friend into kinky stuff, which worked well as he only came to town a few times a year. Susie stated that she had kept Buddy busy for longer than almost any of them, describing him as a hound with a hole-splitting tool. Susie shared details about Buddy being married to a clueless woman, working while he played around. She mentioned being in control of when he could visit her. Then, Susie asked Lynn about her new conquest, and Sue ran through her prepared story about her fictional lover, Rod. The details weren't important, but Lynn believed every word, encouraging her to take full advantage. Sue expressed amazement at Lynn's control and doubted if she could treat Nick the way Lynn treated me. Lynn explained the dynamic in the animal kingdom, comparing dominant individuals to the rest of the pack. Lynn asserted her alpha position with me and encouraged Sue to take on a similar role with Nick, assuring her that freedom would be hers. Lynn suggested starting with Rod and enjoying every second, stating that Nick would still be there and would fit into his natural submissive role. Lynn addressed concerns about STDs and asked if Sue used contraceptives. Sue explained that most of the time, she made the guy use a contraceptive. But with Buddy, it was different due to his aggressiveness. Sue mentioned getting scared once because it hurt to pee, but the doc said it was irritation from rough closeness. There was a time when she got infected with gonorrhea, and after that, she was more careful. Sue asked how she kept that from me, and Lynn described allowing me to go out by mentioning his interest in playing the guitar with his pals. She looked at me deadpan and gave me the choice, leading to a confrontation later when she took antibiotics. Sue, eager to get the recording back to Nick and me, thanked Lynn and left for home. The conspirators watched the video, appalled. Sue and Nick could hardly recognize Lynn because she was never so harsh on me when others were around. I was shocked, though not as much as the couple, having come to know that Lynn was capable of almost anything. Sue brought up Anita White and mentioned her concerns about Anita's knowledge of her husband's infidelity. She expressed the dilemma of whether to inform Anita about Buddy being with Lynn, considering the risk of Anita blowing the cover. Sue described Anita as seeming deeply unhappy with her husband's reputation as a bully, and pondered if Anita might be entirely cowed by him. Sue suggested that talking to Anita might affect her plans, and sought help from Lynn in handling the situation. Sue thanked us for our assistance and assured that we would be kept out of further details. She specifically asked me not to do anything stupid. In response, I acknowledged the mistakes I had made over the past 10 years, but clarified that I didn't intend anything violent. I assured them that I would handle the situation in my way and requested strict confidentiality. I asked everyone to avoid answering if Anita called, taking full responsibility. Later that evening, Sue phoned Anita White and introduced herself. She confirmed they had talked at Holden's parties and asked if Anita could talk freely. Sue then broached the subject, revealing that Buddy was cheating on Anita with someone Sue knew. She expressed regret and conveyed Anita's right to know. Silence followed on the other end, with Sue discerning sniffles and sobs. Anita shared her frustration, mentioning past issues that Buddy claimed were resolved a year ago. She had taken him back based on his promise, with a clear warning of ending the relationship if he repeated his mistakes. Sue offered comfort and assistance, expressing a willingness to help based on Anita's decision. Anita, appreciating the concern, outlined her resolution. She emphasized that her partner would never share her bed again, detailing the terms of a stringent prenuptial agreement that would leave him penniless in case of divorce due to proven infidelity. She described him as unfit for employment, good only for accompanying her to events and engaging in extramarital affairs. She affirmed her determination to ensure he faced the consequences. In response to my offer to gather evidence, Anita committed to maintaining composure for a few days until she had the evidence in her hands. Plans were made for someone to collect preliminary evidence from my office the next day. Sue arranged a meeting, contacting me at work to schedule an appointment in her office on Monday at 1 p.m. Entering Sue's office with a video camera, I introduced myself to Mrs. White, the wife of the man involved with my wife. I placed the camera on her desk, cued the relevant section, and played the recording. Despite the faint screen visibility, the audio quality was excellent. Witnessing Mrs. White's tears, I offered a comforting gesture, acknowledging her familiarity with her husband's behavior over time. Subsequently, I revealed my plans to Anita, stating that participation was optional, but extending the offer nonetheless. Anita disclosed the years of intimidation she had endured, expressing her desire to turn the tables and make her husband suffer. When asked about potential violence, I acknowledged that things might get messy, but assured her I had no intention of causing damage. Following the meeting with Anita, work became an unwelcome distraction. Lingering effects of Lynn's words in the video affected me deeply. While acknowledging some truth in her remarks, I defended my conciliatory nature, understanding her perception of me as a wimp. Despite the hurt, I contemplated showcasing a different side of myself on Thursday, pondering how Lynn would react to a more assertive approach. I dismissed any idea of reconciliation, recognizing the irreparable loss of trust in our relationship. Tuesday and Wednesday were marked by reduced office productivity as I meticulously reviewed potential scenarios. The complexity of variables reminded me of the fragility of well-laid plans. Multiple potential outcomes, including my preferred approach, were considered. Thursday's events would necessitate improvisation, and I dedicated time to refining my physical abilities in anticipation. At home, tensions prevailed, limiting conversations to necessities. Lynn, typically assertive, observed my recent behavior, aiming to understand the issue and regain control. Ironically, she found herself anticipating Thursday, speculating on the potential insights a passionate encounter with Buddy might provide. On Tuesday night, as Lynn showered, I searched my dresser drawers for a childhood keepsake from my grandfather. Both my father and grandfather had military backgrounds. Grandpa, after Normandy, he acquired a set of steel knuckles from a German soldier as a war souvenir. As I examined the menacing steel equipment, I recalled Grandpa's caution about its use, but acknowledgement that it might be handy someday. That day had nearly arrived. It was a form of war. Lynn and her lover had engaged in unfair play, prompting me to force a hearty breakfast on Thursday. I knew I wouldn't eat lunch, but hoped to slow down my rival. Pacing in my office, I deposited items in the guest bedroom, contingent on Lynn's choice of waiting in the backyard or returning inside after opening the gate. Regardless, I could adapt. Manipulate the set of knuckles on my desk. I paced, stoking my controlled anger. By 1 o'clock, I changed into jeans, a t-shirt, and sturdy running shoes. Checking my pockets, cell phone, keys, knuckles, and wallet, I called Lynn from my desk phone to preempt her call. The conversation was calm and non-threatening, explaining meetings and phone unavailability, anticipating a possible delay in returning home. Lynn interpreted my call as a sign of returning docility, relaxing with this knowledge. Perhaps she'd reward me with cool-down makeup closeness. That evening, she prepared to meet her lover, and the two drove to the park in 20 minutes. Loverboy's car was absent, so Anita dropped him off, and he jogged to his house, slipping into the backyard through the side gate. Positioned behind a photinia bush on the house's end, away from the garage, I waited, nervously checking the muted phone's time. At 1:45, Lynn emerged in the backyard, dressed in a string bikini, heading to the back gate. After unlocking it and surveying the alley, she closed the gate and settled into a lounge chair under the pecan tree. This signaled me. I had left the side gate ajar. I slipped back through the opening, circled to the front door, and using my key, opened it. Walking over the spot where my wife's betrayal had been exposed days earlier, I entered. In the spare room, I grabbed a cordless drill and some hardware, entering the master bedroom. In less than a minute, I installed a hasp on the inside of the door, leaving a lock hanging. Placing a small piece of wood between the door edge and the jamb, I ensured it wouldn't close, just in case my wife attempted to shut it. Heart pounding, I took the drill to the guest room, picked up the video camera, adorned my right hand with brass knuckles, and waited. Many things could have gone wrong. I might have forgotten a step. Lynn could have unlocked the gate earlier, or her lover could have arrived prematurely. Fortunately, none of that occurred. With controlled breath, I awaited the final assault, planned and executed on my terms. Standing, brass knuckles on my right hand, I held the video camera, peering through the slightly open guest bedroom door. The dark hallway might impact video quality, but the audio would be crucial. As the sliding glass door moved and voices emerged, Lynn's laughter mingled with a male growl. Imagining the man's hands on her, I glimpsed my wife, bikini top already discarded, entering the master bedroom with her lover, neglecting to close the door. I followed at a distance, still recording. Kneeling at the door, I observed Buddy embracing Lynn, who closed her eyes and unbuttoned his shirt. Carefully, I set the video camera on the dresser inside the door, capturing the unfolding scene on the bed. This waiting was the most challenging, a desire to record the undeniable act, leaving no room for denial, fueled by my suppressed rage. Retreating from the door, I stood prepared. Limiting peeks to avoid detection, I observed the couple caressing, both now undressed. With an entire afternoon ahead, they took their time, surrendering to passion. Outside the door, I overheard Lynn referring to Buddy as Daddy, confirming my suspicions about her daddy issues. Anticipating retribution, I couldn't wait to confront them. I heard Buddy's voice expressing eagerness. Peeking again, I saw the man between Lynn's legs, then witnessed the plunge and heard her scream in an unprecedented manner. They began moving together, uttering curses and unintelligible sounds. Having seen enough, I touched the brass knuckles for luck and silently approached the bed. Lynn noticed me just before I forcefully shoved Buddy in the ribs, ejecting him from her. Screaming, he accused Buddy of violating my wife. Shocked, Buddy's face transformed, and he reverted to his bullying demeanor, moving to deal with me. I withdrew a few steps as Buddy turned the far corner of the bed, heading toward him. Misinterpreting my move as a retreat, Lynn, now on her knees, clutched the covers, yelling for me to get out and not hurt Buddy. I shifted back on my trailing foot, took a running step, and hurled myself into Buddy's chest, delivering the brass knuckles forcefully to the solar plexus. They crashed to the floor, with my full weight compressing his chest. In situations where breathing is compromised, all other considerations become irrelevant. Buddy pushed, attempting to dislodge me, emitting a high-pitched whining noise, struggling for breath. Panic filled his eyes. Sitting up and straddling my opponent, I observed Buddy's hands pressing on the floor, trying to find a better position to breathe. I then administered the coup de grace, raising my right hand high and bringing the steel on my fist down directly onto the center of Buddy's terrified face with considerable force. With nowhere for his head to recoil and mitigate the blow, I heard bones satisfyingly crunch and witnessed blood pouring from Buddy's ruined face. Hindered by blood flowing into his mouth and throat, Buddy was completely incapacitated. I got up, walking toward the door, content with the initial confrontation. Ignoring Lynn's screams until her plea for help reached me, I realized she thought I was leaving, aligning with the plan for psychological warfare. After kicking the small wood piece away from the jamb, I closed the door and locked the hasp in place. Turning to face Lynn, I observed her expression shift from anger to frantic realization that we were all locked in. She was undressed and had no protection from this unpredictable version of her husband. In response, she altered her tone, pleading with me. Paul, oh Paul, I know it looks bad, but he forced me into this. He's a bully. He threatened to hurt me and you too. He said he would destroy you to have me. I had to do it. I didn't want to. Approaching the bed slowly as she delivered her explanations, I maintained a stoic expression. Dismissing her with a stern command, I stated, Shut up! You're lying. I know you've been involved with him for months. Redirecting my attention to the wounded person on the floor, who was gurgling and showing signs of distress, I made it clear that I wanted Buddy hurt, not dead. Carefully positioning him close to the iron bedstead, I placed him on his side for blood drainage. Retrieving 5 pairs of handcuffs from the top dresser drawer, I proceeded to secure Buddy's ankles and wrists to the bedstead with 4 of them. Returning to my prone wife, I maneuvered her legs off the bed, secured her hands behind her back, and guided her into the bathroom, seating her on the toilet. I conveyed a stern message, urging her not to cause any damage and insisting that it was time for her to confess. While speaking, I emphasized the presence of brass knuckles on my right fist, ensuring she noticed them. I demanded the complete narrative, how she met the other person, the reasons behind her actions, and why she thought it acceptable to betray me. Additionally, I sought details about her involvement with other men over the past decade, making it clear that we had ample time to unravel the story throughout the afternoon. Lynn made a calculated decision, considering that I wouldn't be spending time with her lover. I knew some details about her actions, but the extent of my knowledge remained uncertain. Questions lingered in my mind. Could she manipulate certain aspects to make her infidelity sound less treacherous? Was she daring enough to lie? Lynn expressed her reluctance, sharing that she never intended for the situation to unfold as it did. She described the aggressiveness of an imposing individual who approached her at a party hosted by the Holtons, ultimately luring her upstairs. Unaware of the person's intentions, Lynn found herself in a vulnerable position with no one around to assist. Curious about the details, I inquired, "What party was that?" Sue, having witnessed the incident, could provide additional information, confirming that I had been cornered. In my quest for more information, Lynn speculated that Sue or Nick might have exposed her. She insisted that Sue had witnessed only the New Year's party, but I countered, reminding her that it was Halloween when she had been with the other person over 20 times. Determined to uncover the truth, I questioned her about who might have revealed her secret. With a sense of defiance, Lynn responded, "You'd be surprised. How many people do you think Loverboy has told? Maybe it was one of them, but that doesn't matter. Sue told you this? That person. I'll claw her eyes out. But I know something about her that will wreck her marriage, and I'll sure as hell use it." After Lynn shared details about Sue's fabricated lover, Rod, she claimed credit for inventing him for my benefit. She described how they orchestrated conversations to extract information, with Sue recording the entire exchange and storing it on multiple DVDs to be sent out at her discretion. Lynn clarified that Sue hadn't initially informed her of the situation, and no specific details were provided by Sue. Regarding the revelation about the New Year's party, I pointed out that I learned about her extensive history during a video conversation. I recalled a phone call Lynn made to her lover last Saturday in our entryway, where she openly expressed affection for him, inadvertently disclosing everything about her past. Convinced that I had sufficient information, I informed her that any further communication should be directed to my lawyer, and legal papers would be served in a couple of days. Expressing the need to consult with an attorney about our situation, I pulled out my cell phone and called Anita to handle the situation. After a brief conversation, I chuckled and ended the call. Marching Lynn back into the bedroom, I showed her the sorry state of her lover, undressed, handcuffed, wheezing, and covered in blood, almost causing her to vomit. I deposited her on the bed, turned off the video camera, unlocked the bedroom door, and opened it for Anita, who had been waiting outside in her car. Addressing Anita, I remarked, "Well, Anita, I saved you some of him. His face is not much to look at now, though. Here's his latest lover, my soon-to-be former wife, Lynn. Have anything to say to her?" Anita approached Lynn sitting on the bed and slapped her hard across the left cheek, evening out the red marks on her face. Expressing frustration, Anita berated Lynn for her foolishness and revealed how highly she regarded the man lying on the floor. Turning to me, Anita pondered, "What are we going to do with him now, Anita? I'm inclined to toss this one out the door with no clothes on and see how long it takes her to find another companion." Get it? Companion. I expressed relief that she had preserved his tool for me. I mentioned having a razor-sharp new hunting knife and suggested cutting off his tool to present it to Lynn, who seemed to adore it. Additionally, I considered stashing his balls in the vault for the safety of women in the town. I intended to enforce my prenup, putting his balls in a vice, as he would get nothing if caught cheating. We planned to escort him to the hospital, providing a fabricated story about finding him injured in the garage. This would ensure his cooperation, knowing he could be cut off without a dime. Perhaps I'd throw him a few crumbs. Regarding Lynn, I mentioned her attachment to her father and pondered if there was more to their story during her upbringing, though lacking any proof. In the event of a messy divorce, I noted that her father might disinherit her, as he did with her sister, to protect his reputation and substantial inheritance. Even after the divorce, I would retain intriguing videos to share if necessary, keeping her in check. I decided to let her get dressed, take her car, and find a place to reflect, cautioning that her ATM and credit cards wouldn't work. I provided her with a quarter, sarcastically remarking it was for a two-bit fancy woman. Maintaining a distant friendship with Anita, we sometimes reached out to each other when feeling low, both hesitant to dive into another relationship after being burned. I acknowledged the pain caused by my harsh treatment of Lynn during the ordeal, recognizing it wasn't the real me. Despite likening it to war, where cruelty can emerge, I vowed never to be in that position again. However, I had no regrets about marring Buddy's face. Anita's insurance covered basic repairs to Buddy's face, and she cut him loose with a little more money than the prenup required. His attempts to attract women proved challenging. In the ensuing months, my depression deepened, and I faded from sight. Lynn accepted a fair settlement and moved in with her sister, seeking help. She grappled with the severe miscalculation of her actions, feeling sick when watching nature shows about animal of prey. Terms like alpha dog or pecking order triggered discomfort, and nightmares about that night with Buddy and me occasionally haunted her. Despite occasional feelings of missing me, I harbored no such sentiments towards her.